Don't be afraid of what you don't know. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And empathy is an evolutionary advantage. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Disclosure Day.
Full Disclosure Day, it is a new day for you.
That is true. I now wear this ring, one ring to rule them all.
And you're off the marketplace. For those who don't know, for those who are listening in for the first time, we have been incredibly busy because this past weekend was the nuptials of one Matthew Kroll and Jamie Walsh.
That's right. We are now hitched.
Yeah.
It is official. I'm off the market, as is my wonderful,
so many
wonderful wife.
Disappointed faces listening to the podcast right now.
No, it was absolutely lovely. Sheer was a groomsman. If you caught I believe we mentioned that before in the podcast as well. I think I asked you on the podcast as well.
You did ask me on the podcast.
Because what better way to surprise a friend? No, it was great. We were up in Maine. It was gorgeous. We got to experience both versions of Maine weather. I feel like we got to experience Jaws, Maine. Like sort of
the foggy rolling.
No, well, I was gonna say that was kind of sunny, and then you got to experience like Widow's Bay, Stephen King, Maine.
Yeah,
which was super foggy.
I woke up on the first day at 4 a.m. and went out with my drone to film just some, and I got stuck in the fog. And there were moments. I've got some of the footage. It looks creepy. I cut it to the music from The Shining because it looked like it was just
pretty
like,
great.
It was like a horror movie. And then like on the same day, I went out with the drone on the harbor, and it was like The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Yeah.
It was like an Italian, like beautiful, sun-kissed, absolutely clear, gorgeous skies with sailboats in the water. Maine was gorgeous, by the way. It was a gorgeous wedding. How do you feel?
Good. I feel it was great. It was wonderful. I was, whenever you do an outdoor thing, it's always super nerve-wracking to make sure that it's good. And the first night, we raised the flag that we designed because there was a flagpole at the center of the place we got married. And that was really, really cool. In fact, that's one of my favorite memories of raising that flag with Jamie and her young nephew. And we turned around and literally like everyone we had invited was on that long porch. So like it was a really good. And I'm hoping that someone got a shot of it.
You know what would have been great? I said this the whole weekend. I was like, droning it, like flying a drone has become my entire personality.
It really has. He drones on and on and on. No, Shahir's that was the thing. Whenever we were wondering where Shahir was, he was definitely flying a drone.
Yeah.
But I mean, the landscape was beautiful and the whole thing was great. I won't bore everyone with details too much, but it was an absolutely wonderful time.
I want to say thanks again for having us. My whole family came up. It was really, really lovely.
Yeah.
I met your family, which is really wild. Your dad. I met, everyone and chatted to everyone. Everyone was great, but your dad, I have a thing, which is that I'm not sure what there is a word for it, but it's like visual storytelling, which is that if you tell me a story, I not only picture it in my head, I cut scenes to it, and I have shots and colors, and I can describe to you like the carpet that's on the floor in a moment when it happened. And so I have a vivid memory of your dad that you have told me that I know very, very well, and that is when you were young. You were walking through the woods and your dad pulled out a knife and threw it against the tree. And it was a moment that you described to me as like the moment where you realized your dad was like, cool.
Sure.
Yeah. And like, I have it in my head. Like I have the scene and everything. And so then over the weekend, I got to speak to your dad. And I don't think he and I have ever spoken very much, but he, you told me that he was a roofer and that he ran a roofing company or a roofing business.
And home improvement.
Yeah. But what you didn't tell me was that he was a former member of the Airborne Army Battalion. Mm-hmm. And so he had done several jumps across his life, and he had been stationed in New Zealand, which we chatted about, in Panama, in Hawaii, in Australia. He eventually became a trainer in the military. And I was like, oh my God, there's this whole side of this dude that I've never heard about. Yeah. And like, it became like this really clear picture in my head. And it was just like wild thinking about like just meeting your dad and the kind of like, because he's also built like a brick.
Yeah. It's funny because as he's gotten older, due to all the roofing and everything, doctors have told him he has the back of a 98-year-old.
Really?
He kind of has a bit of a hunch, but like all of his vertebrae have fused together.
Really strong.
Oh no, he's a beast, but like it's all muscle holding him up. His skeleton is screwed. But no, he is a great dude. Actually, if you want listeners, if you'd like to get to know my father a little bit, I don't remember how good good the episode is, but he was covering for Shahir once on the podcast. We did Big Trouble in Little China back in the day.
Yeah. That's right.
So I think he's on that episode, which is an interesting look into my father. If you're wondering about that.
And then just to jump off the Whitting for a minute as well, but it was kind of Whitting related, which was that the Knicks played Game 5 at San Antonio over the weekend. Now, we don't generally talk about sports on this podcast, but as we're recording this, the Knicks are the NBA 2026 champions. There is a parade going on in New York City as we speak right now. And while we were at your wedding, there was a moment because there was a lot of activity involved where I started watching the game. I was very excited by the game. But I spent the second half of the game huddled in a toilet with red showers on.
So let's talk about this. So there was the wedding happened, the reception happened, everything was great, and then the after party hit, and the Knicks. That was when it was like I think in the second half was when the after party. And the place we had the wedding had a very lovely sort of like game room with a big TV, and you had a bunch of couches if you wanted to, like in a separate building, but like everything's kind of half open air because you're on the harbor in Maine.
Yeah.
And so afterward, there were 3 parties that formed. Right. There was the after party of people just hanging out on the deck and drinking because the bar was still open. There was the people watching the Knicks game. And then, because I'm a psychopath, Jamie and I designed a game within a game of the wedding where if you completed a bingo card and did a task and got a ticket and brought it to a thing and got a special glass and a coaster and you put them together, you could see secret words and it would tell you a place and a time to be for the secret final wedding game.
Yeah.
There was the third party, which was essentially like a mini haunted house challenge room that we built out, and where there was a group of people as well. Shahir and Red were running. There were 4 challenges they could do based on something old, something new, something barred, or something blue, based on when they came in the room, what they chose. And the something blue is they had to beat me in a game of flip cup. And Red and Shahir were hiding in the bathroom with a tiny table with flip cups ready on it that they had to bring out if they chose something blue. So Shahir was watching the Knicks game on his phone in a bathroom with Red for about, I don't know, 45 minutes.
It was actually the second half of the game. So this is where I want to wax poetic about basketball, which is that I played basketball through college, through high school and college in New Zealand. I always joke about the fact that our college basketball in New Zealand, well, particularly me, I'll speak for myself, wouldn't make like a D grade league in the US. You know, like we're nowhere near the quality level, but basketball is always like inspired a kind of level of poetry in me when I think about it, when I would look at it, the reason I love to play it. And I think no better than Spike Lee's movie, He Got Game. You know, the opening 5 minutes of that movie are basketball as poetry is defined. But we don't talk a lot about sports, and it's because sports don't occupy a central part of my life in terms of watching it. I love, playing sports, but I don't watch a lot of it. But this year's Knicks with Jalen Brunson and Cat Towns kind of really inspired something in me, and inspired something in the entire city, I think. Yeah. It has been 55 years since they've won an NBA championship. I think it's been 27 years or 23 years or something like that. Since they've been in the NBA finals, there's been a running gag about like the Knicks will never get there. And they did this year. And the sort of like, if anyone followed the series, the thing that was sort of beautiful about it, and me as a sort of tertiary watcher, was like the San Antonio Spurs are an excellent team. Sure. And they have Wembanyama, who is a monster. I don't know if you've seen him. He's 7'6",
but also he moves very, very quickly. He's not like a lot of other 7'6" players.
It's crazy. So between him and Cat Towns is also 7'2". Like when I played center growing up because I'm big. I'm 6'4", a measly 6'4" next to these guys.
What a small squeak you are
compared to these guys. And like my models for the center were people like Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaquille O'Neal. And the thing about, Hakeem Olajuwon did play on the outside a little bit. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Wilt Chamberlain as well. Those are the centers that I love. And the thing about all of those centers, Shaquille O'Neal particularly, is they don't play outside the paint. Like they don't move outside the middle paint. Like that is the model for an NBA center.
I'm going to pretend I understood half the words and you keep rolling on.
But now you've got Cat Towns who can shoot threes. You've got Wemby who can shoot threes. Like the game has completely changed. My favorite thing is that I would always like, my model for like who would personify me as a center was Luke Longley, who played for the Chicago Bulls. He was an Australian dude, and he played for the Chicago Bulls in Michael Jordan's reign. But he was just like he was he was a center and he was great. He would occasionally score 2 or 3 points if like Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Steve Kerr kind of put him in the right position kind of thing. He's a great player. Obviously, anyone who makes it to the NBA. But I was like, that's my guy, Luke Longley. So there was just a kind of level of, wow, the game is really transformed that I loved watching this time around. But also the Knicks were down every single game in like in the first and second and often in the third quarter. In game 4, they came back as a historic comeback from 29-point loss. So they were down 29 points and they came to win the game with a tip from OG Anunoby, which was, in my mind, one of the most beautiful moments in sports history. It rivaled to me Michael Jordan's game-winning shot in Game 6 of the I think it was the 6 series run that he had when he had the flu. It also rivaled Pele's Hand of God moment, which if anyone follows soccer kind of knows about. OG Anunoby, basically with 5 seconds left on the clock, the Knicks are down. Jalen Brunson takes a shot. It misses, and OG Anunoby comes out of nowhere from the 3-point line, isn't being guarded, and comes through the middle of the paint and tips it in. And it is like his fingertips just, everyone is trying to get this ball because there's 5 seconds left. And if the Spurs can hold this, they win the game. And it changes the entire trajectory of the season. But OG Anunoby comes out of nowhere, tips the ball in, and it goes in. And for the first time in that game, I think it's game 4, the Knicks lead the series and hold it off for the next 2 seconds. It is like poetry in motion. And it's kind of like, it makes you believe, believe in the power of like, fighting and doing well and coming back. Like these guys were down 29 points and came back to win by 2 points.
Sure. Yeah.
And it is just, I can't, throw enough superlatives at how beautiful that was and how beautiful it is for New York City to have this. And I think in a New York City that is like increasingly becoming isolated from the rest of the country because of who's in the White House right now.
Yeah.
And who are, I remember
the only time the Knicks lost the series in the final was when our boy was there.
And I went to another event where people were like, dunking on Mamdani or saying that he was like the socialist thing. So it was like just this incredible thing for the city. I'm so happy about it. I'm like,
our mayors are Muslim, our bagels are Jewish,
and our Knicks win.
Our Knicks win. Yeah.
Knicks in 6.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Knicks in 5.
So that happened while we were at the wedding. I know we don't talk about it much. Maybe we'll do an episode about He Got Game, but it was just it was poetry in motion.
The interesting thing, the cross section, I think, between cinema and sports. Yeah. I'm not a sports guy. In fact, a friend of mine, Adam Chase of Jetlag fame, invited me over for the first game in this series because I'd literally never sat and watched a full basketball game in my entire life. Mm-hmm. And there is something infectious about like, oh, it's been over 50 years and, like that whole thing.
I think that's what it brought together.
And I love being a bandwagon sports fan.
Yeah.
In fact, the term bandwagon fan, I always found like a very, very gatekeepy. Like you can dip in and out of fandoms. Like it just have fun with a piece of entertainment.
And like I caught on this season.
I would love it if people were bandwagon listeners of this show and they just came on for when we did certain things. That's cool too.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that really gets me about what you sort of said is the sports give from a different part of your brain, be it an emotional or statistical or something, sort of a vibe of hope.
Yeah.
And I think movies do that too in a different way, but I like that there are these forms of entertainment that can give a human being the same level of sort of emotional boost that comes from, I think, different parts of our brain and the ways that human beings think and interact with one another. But I like it because we built like the way I don't give a shit about the act of playing basketball, but the way that you just described what happened in that game felt very cinematic to me. And therefore, like, I'm not like the way you said it's great, but also the way it played out is great. Yeah. And there's our brains are built to build stories out of things. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's a bunch of people running around arbitrary lines, throwing a ball into a basket, but you get to a narrative and a story and a real arc that can give you an emotional catharsis. And I think that's why I appreciate sports, even though I don't watch them a lot.
Yeah. And it just was, I think, an extraordinary moment in the city of New York. And that's where we live. And I wanted to shout it out.
But now we got to go to Kansas City.
Kansas City for Steven Spielberg. Now, we've only done 2 Spielberg movies on the podcast.
That's crazy.
We did Jaws and The Fabelmans, right? Have we done anything else? Oh no, we did the post as well. So 3 movies.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
Maybe more. Email us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com.
Actually, I want to say this. Patrick Willems and I huddled into a corner during karaoke because we were like the nerds.
Night 1 or night 2 of the wedding?
The night of the wedding.
Okay.
And I think we spent like an hour and a half talking about Spielberg. And it was really, my wife wanted to do karaoke and I was like, I'm just going to hang out here and like.
I have great videos of her singing.
Yeah. So I want to point this. I've been threatening to do video essays for a while. I wrote a video essay about Steven Spielberg, about a very specific run of Spielberg's career, which is not one of the most obvious ones, which I've called the Spielberg Jazz Age. I need some encouragement to actually make this thing because I wrote the whole thing out. I need to go back and draft it. I need to write it. I need to shoot it and all that sort of stuff. But if anyone would be interested in that, please email in at Only Movie Podcast. I need encouragement to do this because I've got a million other things. I do want to do it because I think about it a lot, but I have not got around to doing it. So email us in if you would be interested in seeing that.
Sheer, 1, I would love you to do video essays. 2, as your friend, I warn you of the treadmill. You already have this treadmill.
And I've got like
and you
5
have
others.
your own other treadmills. Yeah. Why not add another treadmill? Although you can just do them. I think some of the most successful video essayists, honestly, are the ones that kind of just like start as a thing that they do on the side that they love and like can keep that cadence. Like even on extra history and extra credits, it is because we have employees. We had to make sure that the everything's still flowing. We have to keep moving. And so it becomes challenging to find the things that are important to you to do. Yeah. Luckily, the patrons really help out and choose topics that are really great. But like you can be a video essayist that releases one every 6 months.
Oh, it'll be like far less than that. Yeah. But anyway, I will timestamp this. I know we talked a lot before we get to Disclosure Day.
And now it's Disclosure Day.
Tell us what Disclosure Day is about.
Oh boy. Well, the Internet Movie Database says that Disclosure Day is, quote, if you found out we weren't alone, if someone showed you, proved it to you, would that frighten you?
The answer is no.
That's a terrible, terrible Internet Movie Database description of this movie.
Sure, yeah.
That doesn't do anything.
I mean, I think what's great is that it really feels like this is Spielberg with a capital S in terms of both. Everyone is aware that this is a Steven Spielberg movie, and that in itself is exciting. I said to you earlier, I know nothing about what Disclosure Day is about. Now, that's typically my MO, which is that I won't know anything. But I was like, but there is no situation on the planet that will prevent me from going to see a Steven Spielberg movie in a theater.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And I love Spielberg. One of the things Patrick and I talked about is there's a sort of consensus that came around the 90s, and I want to center it around Dawson's Creek. That
because you don't want to wait.
I don't want to wait because Spielberg, there's a cynical side to viewing Spielberg, which is that he is cheesy is a too strong a word, but his movies piddle in optimism that can sometimes feel unearned. You can see that in, the example that I sort of think about a lot is the ending of Schindler's List. There's a moment at the end of Schindler's List, which is like a group hug moment. Now, it may have historically happened, but it feels very sort of typical of the MO of Steven Spielberg. And I think that was a sort of governing criticism. But, as I think is very evident, he's got an extremely storied career. And also is one of the engines of Hollywood as we know it.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers is not Warner Brothers without Steven Spielberg. His movies have produced something in excess of $10 billion worth of box office revenue. The term blockbuster was coined around his movie Jaws. So the modern filmmaking industry as we understand it today is derived and in many ways championed by the work of Steven Spielberg. The year 1993 when he released Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in 1 year was an exemplification of a filmmaker working at the top of their game and producing both art and entertainment in the same vein without too much distinction between them and using the tools that were at his disposal, which are pretty natural. If you watch The Fabelmans, which is a movie I don't particularly love,
which I did like, if I remember correctly.
But the thing about Spielberg is that I think about in Good Will Hunting, There's a scene where Skylar asks Will, why, how come you're so good at math, or how come you're so good at this? And he says, like, have you ever seen a pianist sit down, like Beethoven sitting at a piano and just knows what it is, like before the first time? I think that's Spielberg with a camera. And, I think War of the World, oddly, War of the Worlds is one of the great examples. The first 10 to 15 minutes of the War of the Worlds is an example of like, this is a filmmaker that knows exactly where to put the camera at any given moment, and he's never wrong. And it's like, it's a really strange phenomenon, but I was like, there's nobody who does it better than that. Patrick and I kind of like came to this conversation talking about the fact that one of the most underrated, I said this, Patrick didn't say this, because I don't think he would go this far, but I would say, I would make the argument that Spielberg's greatest movie is Munich. And is one of
interesting.
It is like there are in a series where in a body of work where there are so many greats. I think Munich is the one that exemplifies everything we're talking about. It's either Munich or Catch Me If You Can. But this is a filmmaker who made Jaws, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. People consider these perfect movies, and I don't disagree with them at all. But this is a filmmaker who is preternaturally gifted.
A Spielberg movie that I really connected with back in the day, I think it might have come out right around the time we started this podcast, was Bridge of Spies.
Yeah, Bridge of Spies is superb.
I really like, I connected with that movie far more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was looking through sort of the filmography, but also I always get this name wrong, but Janusz Kaminski.
Janusz Kaminski is a cinematographer.
He's been a long-time cinematographer, and
it's sort of really interesting. I think of Janusz Kaminski and Wally Feister, who was Christopher Nolan's cinematographer to begin with for his early movies. Wally Feister and Janusz Kaminski eventually tried to go out and make their own movies at some point. Janusz Kaminski's film, I think it has Adrian Brody in it. It is a supernatural thriller. I think it has. I forgot what the title of it is, but I can picture the poster in my head. It didn't work out too well, and then he's eventually just come back and worked with Spielberg the whole time. That collaboration, which I think has started with Schindler's List,
I believe so. I'm kind of digging back through right now, and that's what it looks like.
Because Janusz is Polish, I believe, and he wanted a Polish cinematographer.
Yes,
and has been going since Schindler's List. It's almost trite to say, but the use of like volumetric light by Janusz Kaminski is like, in any other filmmaker's hands, in any other situation, it would be the worst thing in the world.
Sure.
But in his hands, when light pours through the windows in like big volumetric blown out rays, it is the greatest thing on the planet. And there's scenes of that in this movie.
There's enough lens flare. I felt like they let J.J. Abrams in for at least a couple days.
Well, it's the other way around. J.J. Abrams, is pulling from Spielberg. Like Super 8 is J.J. Abrams' E.T.
Yeah,
it's his Spielberg homage. Look, there's just no denying that this is one of the great filmmakers of our time. Coming back to do a film, a genre of movies that he pioneered with E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I was going to say, don't forget.
Crystal Skull. Alien movies to Spielberg are like gangster movies to Scorsese. It is this well that he is deeply interested in, that he can come back to over and over again, and he has something to say about each time. So in a way, I thought a lot about this movie in relationship to The Irishman, because I wondered about like a filmmaker towards the later years of his life.
79.
Reflecting back on the period of, this sort of genre of movies that he had pioneered. So that's a lot of preamble to think about Spielberg. And that's the context I bring into the movie without knowing anything about it.
So can we talk about the context? And I promise you we will talk about Disclosure Day, but I want to, before I sort of talk about my thoughts about this film in particular, I want to talk about what the Spielberg of it all means to me based around my thought process of looking at a piece of his work. Because everything that you've just laid out is entirely true and so ubiquitous to not only his oeuvre, but like everyone. But Hollywood in general.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time when watching a Spielberg film at this point, especially a new one, trying to two parts, trying to divorce the work from that legacy or deciding if I should. because both ways can move the needle in a couple different ways. Like it could be a positive or a negative depending on what it is. So as I talk about Disclosure Day, I'm still coming, I think, to terms with how exactly I want to view this movie, because I think when looking at it through those two different lenses and each lens has a double side, it can maneuver where I land on this film, if that makes sense.
I think it's a perfect way to look at it, because of the context that I just laid out is someone who grew up kind of in the same era as Dawson's Creek, like thinking about Spielberg as this like larger than life figure. I wonder about the 18-year-old walking into this movie who didn't live through Jurassic Park and Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List, and Raiders of the Lost Ark as like current day phenomena, but like as the movies of their parents' generation. So I wonder what Disclosure Day does as a movie experience for people who aren't well versed, or do you know, like aren't
not well versed, just haven't had a chance to be well versed.
Yeah. In Spielberg, other than there is this like older people like myself kind of talk about him in that way.
In a media landscape of 2026, where Spielberg is the name is known, but only as like, oh, good director. Like
the odd thing is, like, for someone that age, the sort of point of entry where Spielberg would be a comparison would be like the Rousseau brothers in a weird way. Like, obviously not as important, but like of making things that are as significant.
Yeah, to an overall, Venn four quadrant thing.
And that's the thing that's, this is one thing Patrick and I did sort of talk about, was like, that's the wild thing, because, and that's a comparison that, we brought up, but like, the Rousseau brothers and Spielberg, it's like Michael Jordan and I'm trying to think who would be a comparison player.
I don't know this. We don't talk about sports here.
I'm trying to think who would be the Rousseau brothers of the NBA right now, but it's like, they're functionally good. They're functionally good. They were there when a legacy was created, but they, in my mind, they weren't the engine of the legacy as much as Spielberg was at the time. And that might just be our own mythologizing. That might be the fact. Again, their entry point, like an 18-year-old's entry point might be the Fabelmans, where like, this dude made a movie about himself growing up being the greatest filmmaker of all time. Well,
I also think the Russos are akin to a very excellent race car driver, someone who gets into a car and can take that car super fast and hit all the turns and do all the stuff. Spielberg is akin to the guy who built the car, designed the racetrack, decided how the league would run.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Enzo Ferrari. Yeah.
So like that's the difference in my opinion.
Yeah.
So at sports, I guess we're dancing around. Do you want to start? Do you want to say what you thought about Disclosure Day?
This might be like bias in my mind, but there were moments where I thought this was genuinely magical. There were moments where I was like really enraptured in what was happening, and there were moments in this when I was like, Spielberg is Spielberg for a reason. And they really had, and while there were sort of technical things that I could like just parse, there was sort of incredible chase sequences, and not the actual mechanics of the chase itself. One involves like a defiance of physics in some way, a sort of major defiance of physics, but the other thing was like, again, that sort of ability to create tension by the relationship between the actor and the camera and its positioning and its movement. Like, there were scenes where Josh O'Connor's character is like sneaking into a car, which are ridiculous on the face of it, because there's like this sort of like off-screen invisibility thing that happens, which is like, if someone is just 1 meter away off screen, they're essentially invisible. It's
real video game logic. It's like when on the mini map, when you see the guard's cone of vision and you're like on the left.
You're standing right behind them. Yeah. There's a lot of that happening, but the camera, again, Spielberg kind of like just moves the camera into position where it ends up inside the car in this moment as the stakes ratchet up, and as a deep background character kind of moves into place. It's a sort of beautiful balletic dance that he does, and it's incredible. So there were moments where I genuinely thought this was magic, and then there were moments where I was like, oh, the other thing is that Spielberg works on is that he wrings emotional tears from his characters. I was going to say catharsis, but that's actually where I'm going to get to in terms of like a problematic part of this movie for me. he wrings emotional tears out of his characters in a way that very few people can. Emily Blunt's character in this movie like feels like she has a really long stored history, and she's really doing incredible work here. And then Josh O'Connor in the same way. It really feels like these are fully lived, breathing characters that have like a long past. And the movie drops you in midway through the story.
Daniel Kellner, who is Josh O'Connor's character, and Margaret Fairchild. We meet them both just in the middle of their lives,
in the middle of the action.
And Daniel Kellner is essentially, this movie starts in the most un-Spielberg way, which is so funny, just like with a wrestling match and the way it's shot.
Yeah.
But like we're in the middle of his action movie.
Yeah. It's like Minority Report had started a day ago.
Yep.
And so it I was like, for a guy who's made so many incredible movies where, where to start, there's a sort of adage in screenwriting, which is come in as late as possible and leave as early as possible.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is like but I want to say this is my criticism. This is a movie that comes in as late as possible and then leaves too late.
This movie has a vibe of Last Person at the Party.
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
Yeah. So I was like, there were moments where I was like, I'm so here. I'm like, and admittedly, it was 80 to 90% of the movie. I was like, I'm so here. And then there's a 10% portion of this movie that I was like, this is very out of touch.
I would like to speak to, regardless of what side of which coin of what lens of whatever I said before.
Yeah.
This is a movie that when I watched it, I feel like I was sort of on board for the first 2/3 to 3/4 of it. Like Spielberg's flowing. Yeah. Ooh, this thing's happened. It doesn't quite make sense. I don't give a shit because vibes. And then the movie gets to its ending, which we'll get to in a little bit. And that knocked me off. And I was like, okay, it didn't stick the landing, but whatever, it's fine. This is a film, though, that I feel like no matter what angle I look at it from, be it a standalone thing or Spielberg's legacy or anywhere in between, the more I think about it, the less I enjoy it. All the technical things you said, so true. I think Emily Blunt is carrying this movie on her back.
And it's weird that the movie doesn't like center her to begin.
She's not a main. She is,
but like it doesn't center her to begin with.
The story. So okay, there's rumors of how this movie came about, and this is from longtime collaborator David Kipp,
who wrote so many movies that we love on this podcast, including Jurassic Park, Mission Impossible,
but also Jurassic Park Rebirth or Jurassic World Rebirth
and Black Bag,
like there's so many things that are great here. I think there's discussion of how much he was involved here versus just one. Like Spielberg wanted to make one more like big alien movie, so he just kind of let David sort of like just let Steven do whatever. Like it felt like this movie feels like such pure unadulterated Spielberg with no guardrails at all that I think it might actually, and this might be sacrilege to say, I think it kind of hurts the overall product. I think the moment to moment images and shots and ideas are all exquisitely presented, but I think when you put it together, there's not enough of it's not that there's not a structure, it's that the structure is also based on vibes. Like it's, how do I put this? The way that the story comes together, it feels overloaded and a lot of stuff that looks and feels very neat. The second you put 2 iotas of thought into it, feel kind of superfluous. There's also a vibe of, these are 2 older gentlemen, I believe.
David Kipp's not that old.
But like it was born in 1963.
Yeah. He feels like, again, he wrote Black Bag, which we just watched.
Of course.
He wrote Kimmy, perfect COVID movie.
This is interesting.
Yeah.
When you're looking at films or narratives about media landscapes in 2026, this feels like a very older person look at what that would be.
Yeah.
And something I want to be very careful about, because I've read a lot of criticism and I've listened to a lot of critics that I like and some that I don't like about like the Spielberginess of the optimism of this in 2026.
That's that sort of conversation about the the cheesiness of Spielberg's.
Well, it's both cheesy. It's the cheesiness of it, but also how we interact with media today.
Yeah.
And I will even like I, on a personal level, if they all of a sudden released all this, if this happened in real life, if the plot of Disclosure Day, where they finally get a spoiler alert, they disclose all the alien information across major news networks.
Yeah.
I think it would be in the news cycle for 2 weeks max.
Oh, I was even far less than that. I was like, I wrote my review on Letterboxd, and the first thing I said is like, in a world where we're still debating of what happened in January 6th, you know, like, and there are 9/11 truthers out in the world, and that sort of thing, and birtherism. Again, this is all coming from Donald Trump, but like, he's
a symptom, yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that the footage that we eventually see at the end is not spectacular.
Yeah. So I guess my point is this: it's less that, I'll take the optimism. Like I'll take the world is now changed and oh my God, we're all this is a whole thing. Like, wow. The optimism isn't the problem that I have here. The Spielberginess optimism. It's the landscape in which it is presented feels like a lie. Like, because we don't live in the era of media that this is kind of referencing anymore.
But the thing about it is, I don't even know when that era of media existed.
So,
you know what I mean?
You're 1,000% correct.
We're talking about the moon landing in terms of like that is the time that we're talking about.
You're 1,000% correct. But there's an interesting thing about like sort of like early Spielberg to like real like hyper like mega Spielberg to late stage Spielberg.
Yeah,
where like the time periods in which he does his optimism. It feels like there's a niche for it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we just talked about the Knicks. We just talked about me getting married. There's things of optimism that exist in the world. I'm not trying to be a pessimist.
Yeah.
But the way that optimism fits in the puzzle piece of everyday life, I feel like this movie just doesn't understand on a structural level. Now, again, I can get past that. Yeah. There's plenty of movies that I love that make way less sense than this movie. Yeah. And this is where my grading on a curve, going back and forth, really comes into play of helping and hindering what I think about this movie.
Yeah.
A lot of this movie, the second you look at it too long, much like particle physics, doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
There are elements that feel like they're in because they're neat, but the story structure doesn't need them or it doesn't support them. There are it does feel like both main characters kind of could have been the same main character. It feels like Colin Firth's Noah Scanlon, and I love it's such a Spielbergian name. Like, what's he do? He scans into people's minds. Well, his name is Scanlon. And I have no problem with that. I like it.
Yeah.
I never fully understood. Like, there's a hint at what that character is, but not enough to make me care. So, what's going on?
I think the problem is the movie. It's this thing about like getting out too late. Is the movie abandons him? You know, like there's a moment where he sits down in a chair and is like, all right,
fuck it. But not for any actual reason. We've talked about this a lot on the show from a structure perspective of this film's story. Things happen in this movie, not because of an element cause. It's not a cause and effect thing. It's this happens because it has to happen in the script now.
Yeah.
And even to the point where, and I have no problem with this, it's kind of like a superpower between the two characters. Both Josh O'Connor and Emily Blunt have different elements of, well, I have to go east. I have to go east now.
She's kind of like Samantha Morton's character in Minority Report, which is that she is, what do they describe her as? She's in this movie, she's an experiencer or something like that. Yeah. And we later learn how that happened.
Yeah. But and that's totally fine. But that does make for an interesting structure of exposition as to why character, when the character has that, when the character has a cheat code, which is fine, it's narratively explained.
Yeah.
It feels less rewarding to discover.
Yeah.
It feels like there's not discoverability because they just become exposition machines. And there's the weird part. They're acting their faces off.
Yeah.
And I think Emily Blunt is doing more work than Josh O'Connor. I like Josh O'Connor, but
yeah, for him to carry this movie in the kind of way Tom Cruise would have carried Minority Report or War of the Worlds is hard. It's a big thing to do. He's a really interesting actor. And I can see why Spielberg was interested in him, particularly films like Challengers and La Chimera. But Yeah, is like he gets swallowed up by this movie, whereas Emily Blunt flourishes.
Yeah, I also think that Wyatt Russell is a breath of fresh air that kind of gets dropped. Again, there's lots of characters in this, but like I love him as like the boyfriend.
Could you see Kurt Russell in him?
Yeah,
like 100%. I was just like, that is Kurt Russell, like on screen.
I'm very sad about the. Is it Zack Snyder has Escape from New York?
Yeah,
coming up.
Yeah.
If they don't cast Wyatt Russell, it makes no fucking goddamn sense.
I think it's so obvious to me, but it's like it would be interesting.
Yeah, but no, I don't want to get distracted. Yeah. And then finally, Coleman Domingo, who is a joy every goddamn time we see him. His character, well, like this is the script's problem. It's not Coleman Domingo's problem. His whole thing is, I'm on the phone on a set and I'm acting.
He's the exposition dump of the movie.
This is the thing. Yeah. And this is late stage Spielberg. He did it with the Fablemans. And he did it with one other thing where there's a character that is essentially a director. That's all that character is. Like, and it just sort of moves forward. Again, I love, and we're getting into full blown spoilers right now. I love the idea that Coleman Domingo's character is rebuilding a house and a set for some reason, and we don't know why. Yep. We still don't know why.
By the end of it, it really is like an elaborate ruse that I was like, and this is like the production side of me going, I was like, probably could have done this with a virtual wall here as opposed to like building the whole room.
Well, no, but also
like all they do is they just take her into a room to get her to remember this moment.
But then what does that, so there's two problems. One, how did they know it was going to be her?
Yeah.
So how do they even know what the house looks like?
Because they didn't know her.
Nope.
Yeah.
They didn't know her. And how would they even have that information? Sure, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Two, it connects sort of Kellner and Fairchild, their two characters, because they both kind of went through the same thing. But then this is my fucking weird point. Why the hell? They know Josh O'Connor's character. They've worked with him. They have files on him. They could probably reconstruct his house.
Yeah.
What?
And he was abducted just the same way.
Yeah. So why did they try to build Emily Blunt's character's house? Because they don't even know that she was involved until after the first half of the movie. After we've seen Coleman Domingo, aliens, fuck this. So the other thing is, okay, great. They experience it and they realize it and whatever.
Yeah.
It changes nothing.
It
changes fucking nothing. They're still trying to disclose. They're still doing the thing.
It's not because of this that they're going to go do the disclosure.
No. And so it doesn't, I was expecting that maybe somehow it would change Colin Firth's character to then move over and do something along those lines. Yeah. But it doesn't.
It's so strange because you were expecting, so the other thing, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, please go. This is going to be a back and forth.
Yeah, well, we should, I do think at the heart of this, there's something that Spielberg has been tiptoeing around his entire career that has never explicitly come forth, except as clear as it has in this particular movie, which is the relationship between religion, faith, and not blind faith, but taking a leap of faith. Look, in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, the whole thing is taking a leap of faith. And Indy is not a person who believes in religion, but he's
Last Crusade.
The Last Crusade, but he's hunting down the Holy Grail. In Minority Report, there are several conversations about the religious the treating the precogs as religious deities, and Colin Farrell's character in that movie carries like a rosary bead around because there is an explicit sort of like implication of like, where does science and faith, meet in the middle kind of thing.
Interesting stuff.
And it's interesting stuff.
Great moment in this film with Emily Blunt's character where they start like kneeling to her. She's like, no.
I don't want to be your religion. Yeah. But there is at the heart of it also, I forget the character's name, but
which actor?
Killian, Josh O'Connor's girlfriend.
Oh, yeah. Eve Hewson. She was Jane Blankenship.
Who explicitly goes to, is formally training to be a nun, goes to a monastery at some point in the movie, and then has a kind of conversations about what would happen if we were told there were greater supreme beings than ourselves. And her sister mother says something,
played by Elizabeth Marvel. Excellent work.
Yeah, but like, why would God create a universe, an entire universe just for us? And this is all interesting stuff. It really doesn't come to a head. And then the implication, I'm sounding like the character from It's Always Sunny right now. The implication of this is very strange because the implication, there's a sort of fascinating thing here, which is that we don't know what the aliens' intentions are, but we have this group of people who are determined not only to reveal their existence, but also to accept their influence on us.
Feels real pluribus sometimes.
Yeah. It's just like, there's a reading of this movie that feels very much like these people are about to join the Body Snatchers.
We're sorry, Carol.
Yeah.
Did you watch Pluribus?
I did not watch
Okay,
Pluribus.
then I won't say another thing.
I know I should see it at some point. So
you would love that show.
I know. There's a lot of TV I need to catch up on. I'm still trying to catch up on the Knicks.
So spoiler alert, they won.
They did. So it's fascinating. Yeah, and it comes back to that thing that you kind of mentioned in terms of the screenplay with David Kipp. I think The Fabelmans was written by Tony Kushner, and Spielberg wrote the story. It's the same sort of thing here. Spielberg wrote the story. There's a famous story about him writing it on an iPad, and I don't know if he's just tapping away on his iPad for that. But then Kipp comes in and provides the actual sort of structure of this thing. Spielberg's only actually written physically, taken a screenwriting credit on a couple of screenplays. I think AI is one of them, which Kubrick's initiated.
I've rewatched recently.
It's amazing.
I think it's great.
The video essay that I would love to do talks a lot about AI.
Yeah. The film.
The film, yeah. And it's entirely written by AI.
Oh, good. Great. We love that here.
But there's and to me, the thing about Spielberg that has been wonderful is not only his showmanship is the best of the best. The Russo brothers don't hold a candle to what Spielberg can do in any given moment. But his films are filled with people having difficult conversations that have no clear answers to them. And that is sort of, that's the beautiful, that is why Minority Report is so interesting. That is why Munich is a film that's challenging, particularly in Where We Live Today after October 7th, that kind of movie is fascinating because it has nuanced conversations about Palestinian homelandship. His films don't shy away from difficult conversations in amongst incredible set pieces. And that's why, among many things, he's a genius. This movie, on the other hand, the David Kipp screenplay is one that does not fully come to fruition. And it really does feel like they're working out the third draft right now. And the ending in particular, where it is one compounded with this sort of nostalgic idea for a time that I don't really think exists anymore. I can suggest that 9/11 was probably the last moment where something like this happened and the world stopped because of the news and was watching it on a level that we're sort of understanding it now. When you watch the sort of basic playback of how this plays out in the movie, when the disclosure day happens in this movie, I would be hard pressed for anyone in the audience, particularly an 18-year-old who, whose only reference point is conspiracy theories in the media that we live in right now, and January 6th conspiracies and all that sort of stuff. And COVID was a hoax kind of thing. To watch the footage, which looks, and I'm going to say this is the one of the, I'm talking about a master filmmaker here, but the alien footage that Josh O'Connor has been carrying around this entire movie on these Minority Report style hard drives looks AI generated, and it looks terrible in terms of the thing you need to have happen at that moment is a magical moment, which makes
a close encounters moment. One might say.
Yeah, makes you believe. Yeah. You need to the audience needs to believe, and the people who are watching that news report need to believe. And I did not believe. I was like, oh boy, what is happening here? And there are moments where Emily Blunt's character provides people that she encounters that moment of belief because she transmogrifies into something that they know.
What a cool power. Emily Blunt, essentially, if you've seen the movie, at first you sort of see her talk to people in their own language and do whatever and say something
She's
that they
the Tower
need
of Babel.
to hear.
Yeah.
And then they let her just sort of go because they're just flabbergasted.
Yeah.
And this is where it's funny. This is a moment of, and eventually you kind of see what they see, you see the character that they think is giving the advice or whatever, and that's really, really cool. I have no problem with that as an ability, and even the that people being flabbergasted. I think that every character being hit with an empathy bomb like that and then just forgetting their job feels odd to me.
Here's the it's a dumb fix, but it's like a fix in some respect that, needs to be workshopped and mechanicked out, is that she needs to do that at the disclosure day moment to the entire planet.
Yeah.
Because like that superpower that she has gets her to the disclosure day moment and even turns the power back on.
And that would make her character have a point.
Yeah. But at that moment, she is just a very good news anchor.
She's a great news anchor.
Yeah.
But oddly, holy shit, Shahir. Oddly, not the news anchor we see delivering the news. That actress does a wonderful job.
Incredible, yeah.
But why she wants to be the arc is that she wants to be a news anchor. And then you don't let her, after going on this adventure with the superpower to let her be the greatest news anchor ever and let people know the truth about this. No, it's just some other lady. And you're like, oh, and wheel out the alien now. And I'm like, what happened?
Yeah. There's also just a horrifying ending to this movie it's like the Mars Attack endings where the alien comes out and just like,
well, time to eat you.
After she goes, listen, everyone right now is about to get a full frontal lobotomy, but be cool,
And you could argue that with her last word of listen, she is going to then become the great news anchor. She's going to become the thing. But like, two other things that I was less interested in the more I thought about them. First, we are seeing in the background of this movie hints of the world on the brink.
Yeah. The North Korean.
But it's also like Russia, North Korea. It's all so vague.
Yeah.
And then we only see it because, again, you kind of see this movie's budget a little bit on its sleeve. And I'm not saying it was cheap, but it's also comparatively to blockbusters, I feel like it feels smaller than like in scope and scale. Obviously, it takes place all in Kansas City outside of looking at cameras places.
Yeah. And who'd want to go there?
No, but like it's just one location or one city, right? Or one area. And I think that the only time we see, and we don't even know why, we see at a gas station people panic shopping.
Yeah.
But we don't know why. Like there's a mention of like, doomsday clock or whatever. And you're like, okay.
I got the sense that, there was the North Korea thing was happening.
But there's no, like they don't make that clear at all. So like, I don't care, and I'm confused more than it feels like a ticking clock of any kind.
So I'll point to two things, one that was realized, one that wasn't realized, in terms of like, basically this is a science fiction idea that there's a world on the brink that will be ultimately, we will be swayed from the brink of arms because of our realization that there is a greater humanity or a greater sense of who we are as a humanity amongst us. When Kubrick commissioned Arthur C. Clarke to write 2001: A Space Odyssey, the book deals essentially with sort of almost a similar trope, which is that the world is on the brink of a nuclear annihilation that is thwarted by the presence of these larger beings that alters the course of human evolution. That was taken out of the movie ultimately because I think Kubrick was less interested in like trying to depict a world at war than he was like the internal conflict of what humanity's ascendance would be like. So that was one. The second is in James Cameron's The Abyss. In The Abyss, as they discover that there are creatures that live under the water that are possibly alien in form or some kind of like higher life form. The ending of that movie involves that there's a nuclear threat going on above surface, and what the aliens eventually do is create a tsunami, like a large tsunami that threatens to destroy all of humanity unless they pull back from the brink of a war. And so it's this like, classic idea that we will be thwarted from that. And this movie is piddling in the same kind of thing, which is that there is a threat of nuclear annihilation because North Korea is going off the deep end and will fire bombs and what have you. And, there are people, panic purchasing. And essentially the reason why all of this is coming to fruition at this point is because the aliens are needed to show humanity a greater sense of humanity that will stop us from destroying ourselves.
Sorry.
But the film does not deliver on any of that because it falters in both the delivery of that, the questions of faith that it has to have about it, and the execution of the final moments.
We don't get enough of that to have it matter.
Yeah.
Also, if that was the case, there's also the evil government / corporation that wants to not disclose because profit or something. Like their goals. No one's goals outside of the people trying to disclose are ever made clear.
Yeah.
It's all vagaries of like, well, this is bad going on, and these people
panic,
are bad,
yeah.
and it caused panic. There's already panic. Like you've even shown elements of panic going on because of the real world stuff happening. Like so,
and this is where Colin Firth's character basically really needs to butt up against Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor and basically say, look, I know you guys have good intentions here. I know that what you want is for the truth to come out because the truth matters. But the truth will destroy us, and we're already at war.
It's funny though, like we're already like without the truth coming out, we're already going to be destroyed. So that like in the way that the script is structured, it doesn't.
There needs to be something like that.
Yeah,
and
I love
not.
And I love. We've been poo-pooing for a second. I love the dumb magic sticks that they have that do whatever the movie needs them to do. Like that's fine. Like that's
Invisible
neat.
House.
I love Invisible House.
Yeah.
I love scanning into people's brains and like controlling them, and like I like that he's going to control the lady to stab him with the knife, and then they know it's going to happen, so they tie her up. Like I think that's all
incredibly
very fun.
tense stuff, as well as like the moment where she's in the back of the car and he looks over and she's got a butcher's knife. It's like this is the stuff Spielberg is so good at, which is that there is action happening concurrently with emotional tension.
It is a story issue and it is a structure issue.
Yeah.
The moment-to-moment shit in this is absolutely top-notch and delightful.
Yeah.
I think my last sort of qualm, I think, is a bit with, and this is not Spielberg's fault or the filmmaker's fault, it's kind of in the marketing. This movie had, I know you don't pay attention much to that, but it had a real flip-flop in the marketing.
Okay.
It started where it hinted at aliens, but didn't know if it was aliens. And that got me really excited to be like, I bet you this isn't aliens.
Right.
They're going to do something cool about what aliens actually are and disclose that.
Yeah.
Like, and so in my head, I was like, ooh, that's juicy because it's setting it up that way.
Yeah.
Then the second wave, they go full out and tell you it's aliens. And I'm like, okay, like that's fine. Cool. And then the third wave was a trailer that has Spielberg in it talking about what would happen. Like I've always been so interested to talk about what would happen if they disclosed aliens, like how that would affect the world and all this stuff. Like, and he talks about like that's what he's really interested in.
Yeah.
That's where this movie ends. That's not what he kept saying in that final trailer is where this movie ends. He doesn't tell that story. He tells the story leading up to the thing he said he's interested in.
Yeah.
And so I was left, and I normally wouldn't, if the filmmaker himself did not come out and say that, I wouldn't levy this as a criticism.
Yeah.
Because that's, we often talk about like, well, we could like, oh, what movie do we want it to be?
Yeah.
It sounds like that's the movie he wants this to be, and it's not. So I'm going to jump on board and say, yeah, Steven Spielberg, I agree with you. I'm really interested in that story of how the world would react truly to this and what would be going on. There's a version of this movie that takes place, it starts at Disclosure Day and keeps going. Yeah. And I could see that being so, because that's something that we haven't really seen before. We've seen later stages of it, like District 9.
Yeah.
Like District 9 is way later after the thing. Yeah. Like I would have loved to have seen that. And so
Alien Nation is the one that comes to mind.
Yeah. And so I think that is a frustration I had that I would not levy at this film if the marketing did not have the director come and say, I'm really more interested in the more interesting version of this movie than it actually is.
So, coming back to that question of like, do you watch this as a Spielberg movie or do you divorce yourself as a Spielberg movie? And I think to me, the analogy there again is Scorsese's The Irishman. And, like Scorsese and Spielberg have had fascinating overlaps in their career. I've talked about the fact that at one point Spielberg was going to direct Cape Fear and Scorsese was going to direct Schindler's List. And they kind of like decided to switch, but they eventually like switched projects.
What a fun shuffle.
There's an interesting, fascinating moment of like both have done the incredible story of the American con man, Scorsese with The Wolf of Wall Street, Spielberg with Catch Me If You Can, both starring Leonardo DiCaprio, and the behind the scenes stories of what actually is the real con in those movies is fascinating. Like the revelation that the entire Catch Me If You Can story is a hoax.
Yep.
Is incredible. And then this to me kind of like feels like when Scorsese did The Irishman, because The Irishman was an elegy to the genre of movie that he had kind of, made popular and had revisited so many times in his life. And in many ways, I get the impression if you watch a film like Silence or The Age of Innocence, you get the sense that Scorsese, he likes making the gangster movies, but these other movies about faith and religion and the Passion of the Christ and that sort of thing are where his heart really is, and he's able to find that within Goodfellas. And I'm underselling his passion and dedication to those movies.
Yeah,
but what's beautiful about The Irishman, when you come back to that, is that The Irishman is to Scorsese what Disclosure Day is to Spielberg, which is like it is trying to now put a cap on, or put like perhaps a final statement on that genre that they had been so fascinated by and talked about so much. And in that respect, I rewatched The Irishman about a month ago. Over the course of 2 nights, I was like, this is such a great miniseries to watch over the course of 2 nights. The Irishman is such a wonderful exploration of both the films that he made, the characters that he lived, the stories that were told there. We have an episode, by the way, coming up that's going to revisit one of Scorsese's gangster movies, where we're going to try to, hopefully, fingers crossed, talk to the people that were involved in the actual story. And it's a fascinating, exploration of what it's like to live that story. Spielberg this film feels like it's reaching for that, but in no way, shape, or form does it have anything. It feels hurried. It feels rushed. It feels as though there's more to be said about this, and I don't know if we're going to get the opportunity to at this point. And
it also feels like I'll say this isn't actually about camera work. I'm using camera as a vagary.
Yeah,
the camera seems to be on all the wrong parts of the story. I'm not
sure,
saying, again, not the shots.
In a metaphorical sense.
Cinematography-wise, this movie is wonderful.
Spielberg always puts the camera in the right place, but I understand what you're saying.
But from a story perspective, it feels like I want to be looking elsewhere for the interesting bit.
I would maybe phrase it another way.
Yeah, let's change it a little bit.
Which is that the timeline, the edit of the timeline is on the pre-roll. And what we want to see is the actual film is down here.
Again, please don't. I'm not saying that the camera work in this movie is wonderful.
I understand the metaphor that you're using here, and it's a shame because again, for me, 85, possibly even 90% of this movie, I was like, this is magical.
Yeah,
I'm so when you're on the ride, when you're actually on the Man on the Run story, it is genuine and Colin Firth is diving in, and we're sort of learning about this. It's magical. A listener of the show sent me I looked at their review on Letterboxd, and they pointed out this thing that I was like, yep, that is 100% correct, which is the magical Negro trope. The magical African American who just comes in to help everyone else's problems. And I love Coleman Domingo. I love, who would say no to do a Spielberg movie? But yeah, there's echoes of that in this movie where you just kind of and I don't mean that pejoratively. I hope that didn't offend anyone, but and from David Kipp, who's such a great writer, who's written so many movies that we love on this podcast, it really feels a little half baked. And Scott, the other thing is that he's been in this territory before. Minority Report is such a great example of a movie like this, which is it's almost the same structure. It's a man on the run with the revelation of the truth that he needs to reveal to people. And when he does, it changes the world.
What's the thing, though, is in Minority Report, it feels like the things or the people that are chasing him have a real sense of viciousness and danger to them.
Yeah.
Where here, the agency of Chemex or whatever, I don't even remember what it's called.
Wardex.
Yeah. It feels like 8 SUVs and a couple pistols. And I'm like, cool. The only time that
they can't see behind them.
Yeah. And they have very limited fields of vision.
Yeah.
In VR goggles.
Yeah.
The only time that they feel remotely in danger is when one tries to pin them against the train that happens to be crossing. And the rest of the time, I'm like, no one's in trouble. It never feels that way. Just for me, the world never felt like it was on the brink.
It's incredible. If you think about a movie like Enemy of the State or something like that, which has this sort of incredible sense of the power of surveillance to capture anyone at any moment. And you go into the Wardex room, with Colin Firth's room, and they have these incredible walls of screens that are monitoring everything at any given moment that pull up these like beautiful UI designed, like these people live for work today. Let's investigate each and every one of them. And yet they cannot find.
I love this. So what I love is that whole thing, right? Like, so, okay, 16 people have left our evil corp and now they're gone. Oh, and now Coleman Domingo's character of Hugo Wakefield, we know he's doing something weird. And so he jumps into Hugo to see him. And then he only gets the idea to check out the other people that left when the PA accidentally walks into the room on set. And he's like, get me those people. Oh yeah, she was one. I'm like, with your giant screens and things, you didn't think to check everyone that left at the same time?
I was also like, you don't need your alien technology to do this. You know, you just need to do a Google search.
It's a cell phone. If you could just track us, I don't know. Regardless.
They do make jokes about
We're
that.
nitpicking. Yeah. We're nitpicking. But I think that there's enough nits here that makes it like hard to really engage with a thoughtful discussion outside of the vibes of Spielberg.
Yeah.
But from a structural standpoint and what this movie actually is, from a story being told to you, the more I won't even put this on anyone else. The more I think about it, the less I enjoy it, because the less it makes sense. There's an argument to be made that maybe that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, but like, I think I go back to my 2 coins of Spielberg here.
Yeah.
It's fine because Spielberg does immaculate vibes and that's great. Or I expect more from Spielberg because he's a master storyteller who's integrated vibes and story structure so perfectly a trillion times in the past. And this doesn't hit that for me. So this is a movie that I wholeheartedly would suggest anyone who is remotely interested goes to see it, because I could see it going either way for a lot of people.
I think your framing is really useful here, because my framing of how to see this movie is entirely based on Spielberg's filmography. So I'm watching it through the lens of like, what is the relationship? How is this movie speaking to Close Encounters of the Third Kind as well as Minority Report at the same time? And I think as you kind of put it, the 18-year-old who doesn't have that context, I'm saying 18, 16, 15, whatever it is, who doesn't have that context, I think it's an interesting film to watch from, this is a master filmmaker and this is why they're a master filmmaker, but the film doesn't quite deliver. And then as a Spielberg aficionado, I really want to point out, the thing that I love about Spielberg isn't just that he puts his camera in exactly the right place, that he does action in the best way. It's that his stories are filled to the brim with complicated, difficult tasks in the midst of action. And nobody does that better than he did. And for me, even, this film gets to 90%, but then, like the last 10% are such a de-evolution of like what had come before it, that it was like, oh, we really have dropped the ball here. It kind of, in the body of work of Spielberg, this starts like Minority Report, but ends like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, that's a real. I mean, yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
and that's like, oh wow, those are really 2 extremes here, and so in a way you're seeing the best and the worst.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. That's I don't think there's a better way to put it. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
This has been the only podcast about the film Disclosure Day. We're doing something a little bit different, Shahir. We're going to do emails at the end.
Yeah, we are, because and this is hilarious, because we wanted to have less preamble at the beginning of the pod, and then we replaced all that email preamble with
the Knicks in my wedding.
Yeah, Knicks in wedding.
Not every week's gonna have the Knicks in my wedding.
That is true. These are 2 monumentous occasions.
Also, side note, we inadvertently had our wedding colors were Knicks colors.
Yeah, it's amazing. I wore a blue suit and the
blue and orange. Yeah. And we were like, holy shit. And wedding happened on International Pigeon Day, which is very important to Jamie.
This is like the connection of a lot of things happening at once. But Jacob wrote us in at Only Movie Podcast that email. There's actually 2 emails from Jacob. I'm going to read the first one first, and we'll come to the other one in a bit. Again, thank you to everyone who's written us in. It has taken us a little while to come back to these emails, and we apologize at the end of the podcast right now, but we hope you're sticking around to read them. I'll email every one of you, let them know where you are. Jacob writes in about Disclosure Day. Well, that was a bonkers ride that I didn't enjoy all that much. Disclosure Day felt like a parody of a Spielberg movie, an Indiana Jones film without the charm where the story necessitates that the protagonists don't understand what they're doing. No one in my audience laughed, but I think if anyone did, it would have cascaded. I usually admire a big swing, but it was such a slog, and I was worried about what exactly the swing was trying to accomplish. Looking forward to your tinfoil thoughts. Well, you got them, Jacob. Again, Indiana Jones without the charm, I think is a good analogy.
Yeah, 1,000%. Thank you, Jacob. Moving on to Prashant writes, Dear Matt and Shahir, been a while since I wrote in. A lot has happened since then, mainly that I have moved to Vienna for my postdoc. Look at that. Just a reminder for the Topam fam, this podcast was part of my PhD journey, and I'm glad to write in at the start of a new chapter. Prashant, that's awesome, by the way. This is me saying that to you, not your email. Congratulations. That's dope. Going back to your email, speaking of, Vienna is a wonderful city for cinema lovers. We have something called the Nonstop Kino Card, which is a subscription service that allows one to watch unlimited movies across Austria and especially in Vienna's charming cinemas.
It's a movie pass, but just for that country.
That's awesome.
We should do that.
We'll get on it.
Yeah.
I know I am very late to the best of 2025 conversation. Well, it seems like you've been busy. But here's my very brief list. Sinners, The Testament of Anne Lee, Hamnet, Secret Agent, It Was Just an Accident, Sentimental Value, The Chronology of Water, Bridget Jones, Mad About a Boy. What a wonderful mention of grief and community. That's good. Bring Her Back, Varn or Redoubt, the highlight of the Gothenburg Film Festival starring Dennis Levant as a real-life historical figure in southern Sweden who built a fortress at the height of the Cold War. The best film I saw in 2025, not for the year, was Swedish filmmakers Bo Wilderberg's Ballad of Joe Hill. It was such a thoughtful, sensitive, epic story about the labor movement and how many of these songs still resonate today. One of my biggest regrets was not watching many of Widerberg's films while they were being shown. Looking back and to take notes from Shahir's exercise of finding a theme or a read, I'd say my favorite films of 2025 were about finding community and kinship in the face of profound violence or loss, which can be structural or intimate. Relatedly, the other theme was finding faith, whereas in art, Sinners, Chronology of Water, Religion, Anne Lee, or Science and Culture, Secret Agent. Now that I am settled in and exploring Vienna's amazing cinemas, from independent multiplexes to 70mm art house theaters, I hope to write in more frequently and be a part of the Topam discourse. Wish you both a very pleasant summer and a huge congratulations again to Matt and Jamie Best. Thank you very much, Prashant.
Thank you,
that
Prashant.
was lovely.
I appreciate you writing in with your top 10 of 2025. The only thing I have to add is I think it would be amazing to watch The Third Man and Don't Look Now, now that you live in Vienna. As you could wander around and imagine the terrors of both those movies. Paul writes in, Hi Topam, although Obsession is a lot tighter, I liked Backrooms better. More interesting and more rewatchable. I didn't find a lot of intrigue in Obsession beyond it needling the audience, whereas Backrooms attempted to tie in the creepypasta aesthetic concept to the architecture of human psychology without being a one-for-one analogy. It did remind me of Stalker, the Tarkovsky film I mentioned there, which is a masterpiece and a better movie, but the necessary comparison delighted rather than disappointed me. Shahir did have a knockout point about Mary's trauma not driving the mechanisms of the backroom, but Kroll ate the entire episode with his articulate and impassioned defense. Great episode and discussion, an instant Topam classic. P.S. Blue Heron isn't playing in my marketplace. Guessing the same of a lot of other listeners. I'm hoping to put a pin in that one till it hits digital. Thank you, Paul. We appreciate listening to our episodes as a fist fight and a knockout battle between the two of us. Who has won at 590 bouts at this point?
You can email us in and let us know.
Imagine two fighters like fighting that many rounds.
Yeah, we're that old.
Yeah.
And actually, this might be a first for Toby. We're trying to catch up again on emails, but we're going to read the second Jacob email. This might be the first time we've ever read two emails from the same person in one episode. Big news, Topam. I have been on a bit of a filmmaking journey this past semester. I enrolled in a few local community college classes and made two shorts, one as writer, director, actor, and one as cinematographer and composer. The one I wrote and directed is a little under 3 minutes. I know you folks are busy bees, but I'm pretty proud of the opening shot. If you have a moment to take a look, he sent us a link. Listening to Topam definitely inspired me and led me down the route of seeing what I could make. Thank you so much for that. A tidbit to share. The biggest aspect of my movie consumption that has changed since making a film is my awareness of lighting. From just watching movies in the past, I intuited a lot of framing, editing, and story. Although I appreciate good lighting as in films, my brain was not there to learn much more about how to pull it off simply by watching it. Hoping this will change now that I know a bit more. Wishing you a lovely, if a bit of a bursting at the seams, summer, Jacob. Thank you, Jacob, and congratulations. That's awesome.
I watched the film. It is fantastic. I said there's a little bit of physical acting that goes on in Jacob's film that I am profoundly in admiration of. I don't want to say I'm proud of you because that sounds not because I'm not, but because it feels condescending. It's extraordinary that you've gone on this journey. I hope to see more of the films you work on. We've had a couple of listeners who've mentioned that they started making films or have been working on films and sending us stuff. We love seeing those. Yeah. So please send those through when you can. I will definitely watch anything that anyone makes. And it's just so cool that lighting has become such a big factor. We hope we've talked about that on the podcast at some point. We talked about Giannis Kaminski on this particular episode. His use of light is extraordinary. It actually also, if you're watching films by Giannis Kaminski, I would put those alongside films by Robert Richardson, who shot for Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese, particularly the movie Casino, which we might talk about at some point in the near future.
Yeah.
Which features that like really strong overhead blown out light that very few people can do. Soderbergh is really good at it as well. It's a hard thing to do. I did some recently and it just looked like ass when I did it. It was like, it really requires like an artist hand to do. So again, thank you, Jacob. Thank you to everyone who wrote us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. It is the reason we keep doing this podcast, even after a wedding, even after holiday travels. We have episodes coming up. They're gonna focus on one particular actor.
That's right. Coming up down the line, though, we do have a few more. I believe Supergirl and one more before we get into. We've said what it is already.
The Summer of Cusack.
The Summer of Cusack. We're going to be doing
the Cusack kickback or the Cusack attack.
The Cusack attack. Yeah. I don't remember. We have a name for it.
Yeah.
So that'll be coming up soon, and then we'll be jumping back right after that. I think with Spider-Man and a couple other late blockbusters in the summer.
Summer is in full form right now. What a wonderful disclosure that is.
What a wonderful disclosure. Shakir, when you are not disclosing things of this day, where can folks find you?
You can find me revealing all my NDAs at my website, suvanova.com. That's SUVANOVA. Matt, when you are not getting married every other week, where can people find you?
You can find me threatening you with a varying stick device that we don't know why everyone was scared of it in a radius at the beginning of this movie after a wrestling match that still bothered me over at my website. Extra credits and extra history over on the YouTube machine. Go check out all the good stuff over there. Until next time, everybody, hey, keep disclosing all the movies you love.
Yeah, tell us about those. Email us in. Love them.
Disclose it.
Bye.
Today. Bye.